Hello and welcome to my video about factoring review. So just to begin here, when we're talking about factoring, we're talking about basically breaking it up into simpler parts instead of expanding. So those are basically two opposite ideas in math. Factoring is breaking it apart, and expanding is taking the parts and expanding it out to the longer form. Okay, so the first type of factoring that we have to remember is greatest common factor. So you're going to look at all your different terms. So for example, you have a term here, and you have a term here. Everything that's separated by a plus or minus is a new term. And what we want to do is find the things that are the same between the terms. And so what can we divide by on both terms, basically? Okay, well, we can divide by 5 over here, like the 25 can be divided by 5. And we can divide by 5 for the 15. And we can also divide by x and divide by x. So if we do that, we're going to take the 5x outside the brackets. So this is the idea of what we're doing here, is we're taking the 5x outside the brackets, and that's us dividing it out. And then whatever we're left with stays inside the brackets. So we're left with the 5x plus 3. So that is greatest common factors. So regardless of what the expression is, the polynomial is, you can factor out whatever parts are similar between the different terms, whether that be numbers, constants, or variables like letters. All right, here we have a difference of squares. So we have x squared minus 16y squared. So the reason why it's a difference of squares, well, we have the word difference. That means we're subtracting. And we know that they are squares because this is, it's literally x squared, so that's simple. It's literally y squared. And then 16 is a square number. Okay, so all of those things are pretty, make it pretty straightforward. So these are both squares, and that's why we call it a difference of squares. All right, so with that said, when we're doing a difference of squares, we want to start off with two sets of brackets, and what times itself equals x squared? Well, x times itself, or x times x, is x squared. Then what you're going to do, that's the first value in the difference of squares. Then you're going to have a positive and a negative value for the next set. So negative 16 or minus 16 y squared. So what times what equals, what times itself is 16? Well, 4 times 4. And what times itself is y squared? Well, just y. And that is how you get a difference of squares, or the factored version of a difference of squares. All right, and the most complicated one is the trinomial factoring. And so, or the most challenging one. It's not that complicated, but it's definitely most challenging. So the process that you're going to go through, in our notes, what we call it is the PSA method. So this is product, sum, answer. And so what you're going to do is you're going to have two sets of brackets, just like the difference of squares. And you're going to have the first value is going to be whatever is multiplying to itself to get that. Sometimes it could be more difficult if that has like a 2 in front. That would make things much more challenging, but luckily most of the time we don't have that. And then, once you have this set up, then you're going to start with the product. So start with the product. So the thing you're asking yourself is what times what is the constant value. So in this case, 6. So what I start with is I start with two minuses only because it's really easy to go from minus to a plus and change it that direction. So I'm going to start with two minuses, and then I'm going to start thinking about it. Well, we have two options. If we're multiplying, to get a positive value, it needs to be positive times a positive or a negative times a negative. Okay? So in this case, it could be either of those, but we know it can't be a positive and a negative. It can't be that one. Okay? And then the sum part we'll take a look at in a second, but let's start with the product. So product, what two things multiply to get 6? Usually I like to start in the middle of like our, if you factored it, a factor tree. So 2 times 3 equals 6. So usually I start in the middle, and so we'll start with that. And now we shall look at the sum. Okay, so now that we have two values that multiply to get positive 6, well, they need to also add to get negative 5. And if they do add together, it does equal negative 5. So we are good in that sense. And what does it mean when we say the answer? Well, usually when we're talking about the answer, then usually we actually have it written in this sort of form, in which case you're asking yourself what value of x would make this term go to 0. So if x equals 2, and then if you look at this term, same sort of process, if x equals 3. So this would be our answer. X equals 2 or 3. All right. I hope that this video helps you guys understand the factoring a little bit more, factoring review. Good luck, everyone. Have a nice day.